On Channel 4.
I'm Jack Cafferty, and this is Strictly Business. The number of companies going public is surging. At issue, we'll talk to an investment banker and a new issues expert about whether the market for these new stock offerings is already out of hand. Can you top this? That seems to be the game advertising agencies are playing as each week brings a still larger merger on newsmakers and ad men who engineered one of the giant mergers. Inside information is the talk of Wall Street. Financial editor Jeff Madrick reports on that, Joan Rivers' PR coup, and corporate profits on the bottom line. But before all that, if you had to pick the company of the past year, Digital Equipment Corporation, called DEC, would probably win hands down. During a period when computer companies, even giant IBM, have been struggling, the Massachusetts-based DEC has been booming, and most observers think its lead in mid-range computers will be very hard to overtake. They are powerful, cheap, and they're bringing computer power to even the smallest business offices. There's also a lesson in patient management in the DEC success. Within the past year, Digital Equipment stock has gone through the roof, gaining about 100 points on the New York Stock Exchange before a recent stock split. The stock in DEC's founder and chairman, Ken Olsen, is soaring too. Only recently, he was written off by many as a has-been.
We were criticized for taking this tedious, disciplined, organized, scheduled, planned approach to get things that would fit together in a large organization.
2 years ago, you could have picked up a number of reports, or better yet, picked up the phone and talked to a number of analysts and found a lot of people suggesting that if Ken Olsen resigned, the stock would in fact go up the next day.
Wrong. Witness Digital's financial scorecard for the quarter ended last March. Earnings per share climbed by 42% versus the previous year. Net income leaped by 86%, and gross margins reached a 5-year high.
Wall Street right now is bubbling over with enthusiasm for DEC stock.
We're not doing that well. We're doing okay.
Olsen's modesty aside, DEC's performance is even more stunning given the industry's current slump. Overall, growth in the computer market has skidded from about 35% a year in the early 1980s to 8% now. DEC is soaring because it has developed the right products for today's marketplace. It specializes in mid-range or mini computers, the kind large companies use to channel more computer power outward from headquarters. And in the past year and a half, it has successfully revamped its standard line of VAX computers, which when grouped together or clustered, rival the performance of far more expensive IBM mainframes.
DEC is the IBM of the 80s, and the reason it's going ahead, the price performance that it gives for the user is enormous relative to any other computer manufacturer.
We feel that with these powerful computers spread through the organization, sharing software, sharing workload, sharing information, this is going to be the biggest contribution to the efficiency and excitement and fun within an organization.
Digital computers have traditionally been strong in engineering and scientific fields. Now, DEC is also selling well to businesses. For instance, Moody's Investors Services has added DEC computers to its existing IBM system. Both companies' machines are used in producing thousands of municipal bond ratings for clients.
We will continue to always have a need for a large central database of financial information. IBM will serve that need for us very well. DEC serves the need for internal dissemination, local networking, getting the information to my PC. DEC serves that need, and it also serves a lot of that need for our customers.
Though digital sales last year were only a tenth as large as those of IBM, DEC has installed a larger number of new computers, and many say Big Blue has cause for concern.
DEC is aggressively pursuing IBM in the low end of the large computer area. And IBM is aggressively pursuing DEC in the scientific market, a market which it ignored for many years.
Characteristically, DEC chairman Ken Olson says it's nonsense to consider DEC in the same league as IBM.
We're not out to get IBM or to compete. We want to sell our solution to the world, and we don't think of it in negative terms of, as an American, I'm proud of IBM and wouldn't want anybody to get them.
Back in 1983, few would have viewed DEC as a glamour stock. The company was spending heavily on developing new products and markets. The personal computer it introduced, the Rainbow, was a sales flop.
This makes it very easy to criticize when people were doing exciting things with personal computers. It made me look too old and the company look too dull. But in time, people realized this is what really is needed.
Olson's top priority now is to get his financial house in order. The company's return on equity over the past 5 years has lagged behind most of its competitors, and Olson has cut costs sharply. DEC's net income, which hit a low in 1983, is now on the upswing. How long will DEC ride high in the computer world?
This is a very dynamic and rapid changing business, and that means that no company can sit back and believe that how they perform today, it is a guarantee of the future if they are not to continue to do what they have been doing very well.
But some analysts think only a slowdown in the nation's economy could derail DEC's surge to profits.
The chance of having a group of companies come out with products, each of which is a step ahead of DEC, and collectively having a major impact on the company, I think is very, very small.
Ken Olson, who turns aside thoughts of retirement, is not the type to rest on past laurels.
The day we say we're a success, I think that's the end.
To keep its competitive edge, DEC's Ken Olson says he will continue to reinvest profits into research and engineering. The company has never paid a cash dividend in its 29-year history. Coming up next on Strictly Business, this week's newsmaker, Alan Rosenshine, chairman of the advertising agency BBDO.
I would never even say bigger is better. Bigger is bigger. Better can be the result of being bigger if you play it right.
Strictly Business is sponsored in part by Goodyear Eagles. Goodyear Eagles high-performance radial tires. You either have Eagle tires or you need them.
Last year, 378 major auto races, like the Indy 500, were won on Goodyear Racing Eagles. That's more than 9 times as many wins as all other makes of tires combined. And that proven Goodyear quality is why more people decide you either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them.
The Remington microscreen shaves as close to the blade or your money back. The first screen shaves incredibly close, the second even closer. And this rechargeable never needs a cord because its convenient charger stand keeps it continually charged. The Remington microscreen shaves as close as the blade or your money back. Now enter Remington's Going For It Travel Bonanza. Over $2 million in free travel prizes and travel discounts from United Airlines, Westin Hotels, and Hertz. Enter now.
Before you get roped into one supplier for your business communication system, consider this. Now there's a company that takes only the best products from the best manufacturers and ties them all together in one communication system that works as simply as this. NYNEX Business Information Systems.
Someone falls off a ladder, sues for $2 million, and you pay for it. A man has a heart attack starting his mower, sues for $1 million, and you pay for it. Kids are injured, damages run into the millions, and you pay for it.
Who's to blame? Manufacturers, insurance companies, lawyers, or you? Join me, Betty Furness, for Product Liability, a Risky Business, starting Tuesday at 6 on Channel 4.
Madison Avenue is turning into Merger Avenue as acquisitions are sweeping up advertising firms. With Jeff Madrick as our newsmaker this week, a man in the middle of one of the biggest mergers, Alan Rosenshine, chairman of BBDO.
Camera. 101, roll 218. Okay, ready, and action.
It's the British ad agency Saatchi & Saatchi that's created all the merger action entirely through acquisitions. The brother team, who some call Snatch It and Snatch It, have catapulted themselves into the largest agency in the world. In fact, when Alan Rosenshine engineered a merger of his highly respected firm 2 weeks ago with Doyle Dane Bernbach and Needham Harper, the new combination was the largest in the world. But Saatchi topped it last Monday by acquiring giant ad agency Ted Bates. The merger pace has been building. In 1984, there were 8 mergers involving ad agencies. That leaped to 19 last year, and so far this year, there are already 11. The billing leaders now rank as follows. Saatchi at the top with $7.5 billion. The new BBDO has been bumped back to second with $5 billion. And Interpublic, which owns such agencies as McCann Erickson, is third with $4.7 billion. The question, of course, is whether the now behemoth agencies will endanger the quality and creativity in advertising. Alan Rosenshine will be chairman of the combined companies BBDO, DDB, and Needham Harper. He admits the overlap of the 3 firms will lose clients, but he insists larger size is now critical to compete.
Mr. Rosenshine, the mergers are coming fast and furious now. Is it slow growth, pure and simple, in the advertising business that's prompted them?
Well, I think slow growth is a part of the reason, but certainly not the full reason. There is, I think, a new level of critical mass that's necessary to operate effectively in a totally changed environment. It's very expensive to go about the world building or buying resources in Asia Pacific, in Europe, and Latin America.
But growth has slowed. Surely this is a way to generate growth.
Yes, yes to both. It is a way to generate growth, and but that can't be, at least for us, the only reason to talk to another agency and want to get together with another agency on a merger basis.
It's been reported you've lost one client already, Stroh's. Do you expect to lose any more?
Oh, we'll probably lose a few. We factored in at the beginning of the merger and during the merger discussion a very tight analysis of best, worst, and most likely case scenarios. I don't think we'll come anywhere near our worst case scenario, which simply meant just how bad could we withstand a fallout.
What is your worst case scenario?
Oh, I'm not going to give it a number.
What can we do? I want like fog wafting over the roads, you know, and wet.
The most controversial question about the ad mergers is how they'll affect an agency's most important product, creativity. Small firms took out a spate of ads last week that subtly ridiculed the big mergers. Rosenshine insists size can help.
I believe that the agency business has changed considerably from the grab the phone and get a job atmosphere of 10 or 15 years ago to creative people looking for stability, looking for job security, looking for equity in their jobs over the long haul. And as such, size can provide creativity by providing the better milieu for creative people in which to work.
What's changed? Why are they looking for stability, and how's it different?
The business has gotten rougher. There are fewer people in it. I think in large measure, the competitiveness of the business and the economic pressures on the business have caused people to want a more stable, a more long-term atmosphere.
All merger waves seem to take on a life of their own. One merger provokes another. Rosenshine says that the agencies are increasingly concerned with where they stand in size and scope compared to their merging competitors.
I'm doing just as good work as I did last year. I've picked up 10% more business. I have 3 more wonderful worldwide clients, and I've slipped 7 pegs in the ranking.
Have the acquisitions by Saatchi & Saatchi provoked this merger?
What they have done is shown that it is possible to create mergers where it was perhaps thought unthinkable before.
Deep down, Mr. Rosenshine, do you believe bigger is better for advertising?
No, I never believe bigger is better. I would never even say bigger is better. Bigger is bigger. Better can be the result of being bigger if you play it right.
Mr. Rosenshine, thank you very much.
My pleasure, thank you.
Coming up next on Strictly Business, as the bull market allows more companies to go public, are these new investments getting too risky? This week's market moment. According to Prudential Beige, wheat prices are volatile due to Chernobyl crop damage and its uncertain effect on U.S. food exports.
Oh, my arm.
Rub something on it.
I got Ben Gay. I don't want to go back to work smelling like Ben Gay.
Don't. Try Sports Cream. It smells nice and clean.
Does it work?
Sports Cream has a strong, clinically tested pain reliever. It starts to penetrate immediately to relieve sore muscle pain.
No workout today?
Sure. I feel great. Why?
You, usually smell like Ben Gay.
Not anymore.
Sports Cream, the fast-acting pain reliever that smells great.
In 1985, the winning cars of the most prestigious auto races were equipped with Goodyear Racing Eagles. So it's small wonder that in 1986, most of the finest high-performance street cars are equipped with Goodyear Eagles. You either have Goodyear Eagles, or you need them.
The sports professional. You can spot him right from the start. The sure hands, the good eye, the quick reflexes, the inside moves, the smooth follow-through. Len Berman, Sal Marciano, Marv Albert. Once you've seen them in action, anything else seems amateur. News for New York. Is there any reason to watch anyone else?
Did you know that anyone who cares about kids in school can belong to the National PTA? I do.
Me too. Even grandmas and grandpas could join.
And single people and people without kids.
Yeah. Well, you get the idea. Come on, join the PTA.
Kids are counting on you.
Savings now. Flemington Fur's special Mink in May sale. Next year's fur fashions at prices far below what you'll pay come this fall. Flemington Furs, open Sunday and every day.
On Wall Street, they call it a window of opportunity. The remarkable rise in stock prices has enabled new or private companies to go public for the first time in surging numbers. In the first 4 months of this year, there were $3.9 billion worth of these initial public offerings, compared to only $1.5 billion over the same period last year. And the pace so far is not far below the record pace of 1983, when more than $12 billion in IPO money was raised. But many of those deals proved bad investments for buyers. And now there are concerns that this IPO surge may also be getting out of hand. At issue is a replay of 1983 in the making. Joining us from Portland, Oregon, Norman Fosback, editor of New Issues, an investment publication, and here in New York, Bill Hambrecht, who is president of Hambrecht & Quist, a leading underwriter of IPOs. Gentlemen, welcome to Strictly Business. Mr. Fosback, is a replay of 1983 in the cards, do you think?
Yes, I believe it is. We are still in the initial stages of a great new issues boom, but we are moving very rapidly toward the pace of activity that we saw in 1983. The difference is that this time around, the boom appears to be centered in a broad cross-section of many different industry groups, whereas in 1983, it was very high technology oriented.
Mr. Hambrecht, do you see a difference between this market and the one in 1983?
I think Norm's right. It is broader. It's based over a lot more industries, and in some ways the numbers are a little misleading too. There are a couple of major deals, like the Australian Fund and Fireman's Fund, that have inflated the numbers.
So you think there's some distortion in the picture?
I think the new issue market is still on a reasonable basis at this stage. It has not inflated to the kind of pricing that we saw in 1983.
Mr. Fosback, you say that you're becoming a little more skeptical now about this IPO market. Give me an example of your skepticism.
A few days ago, Home Shopping Network went public at $18 a share, and the stock within 3 days traded at $50. So we're moving to a very frenzied level of activity relatively quickly. However, I think I agree with Bill that there's still major opportunities yet ahead.
Are there some better buys around, do you think, in this particular IPO market?
I think the quality is higher, no question, than 1983. We try to look at it from the point of view of how profitable the companies have been and how long they've been profitable. And if you look at the whole group of companies that have gone public in 1985 and 1986, they are more mature companies, and they have higher levels of profitability.
nevertheless, I would like to add that when we're talking about new issues, we are talking about very risky type of situations. These are younger companies than you'll see traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And consequently, from an investor's point of view, I think the first three rules should be diversify, diversify, diversify.
What areas, perhaps, would an investor be wise to exercise caution in, do you think?
I think that if you're looking at new issues, the one area that I believe investors should avoid are startup situations. These are companies that I think have an unusually high degree of risk inherent within them, simply because they have no operating track record.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Hambrecht?
We've done two in our career. One was People Express, which has done very well. One was Encore, which is having its problems. And I suspect that's probably the kind of risk-reward ratio you get on new issues like that.
Mr. Fosbach, how big do you see this thing in 1986? Do you think it'll go over the 12.9 billion we did in 1983?
At the present rate, it looks like it will. For one thing, we have a huge offering coming out next month, the Henley Group, which frankly I'm not that impressed with, but it looks as if it's going to be about $1.5 billion, which would be by far the largest new issue in history.
Gentlemen, thank you. Our guests have been from Portland, Oregon, new issues expert Norman Fosbach, and here in New York, investment banker Bill Hambrecht. Two initial public stock offerings slated to come to market in late May or early June are De Laurentiis Entertainment Group and the biotech company International Genetic Engineering. What to look for in the week ahead with financial editor Jeff Madrick, next on The Bottom Line. This week's Business Almanac. According to the Tax Foundation, this year taxes will take a 2-hour, 39-minute bite from the average U.S. worker's 8-hour earnings, pending tax reform.
What's that you're shaving with?
A Norelco.
Looks terrific.
Well, it is America's leading electric. It's rechargeable, it's guaranteed, and it gives me a fantastic shave.
As close as a blade?
Yep. Feel.
Wow.
It's our patented system that lifts each whisker up and shaves it off blade close.
I love it when you talk high-tech.
What do you think of the Norelco Ladies Rechargeable I gave you?
Terrific. What do you think?
Sensational.
Norelco. We put quality first.
But if I don't run, it doesn't mean that Jerry Farrar is going to be quiet.
The primary violence in South Africa is the violence of a party.
I'm not planning to run for president. I'll be candid with you.
The big media is essentially fair. Television is a big spectrum. We're just 22 minutes of it.
We define ourselves by our limitations. If you believe that you're a dumb blonde, then you will always be a dumb blonde.
I am not an authority on blackness.
We hope you'll join us. Donahue, weekdays at 9.
Fox gets Joan Rivers. The SEC goes after an insider. Jeff Madrick reports on those. But first, he takes a look at corporate profits on The Bottom Line. Jeff?
Jack, one of the fears in the stock market has been that corporate profits are just not building. And judging by some accounts last week, you'd think profits were disappointing everywhere. The fact is, given the more sluggish pace in the economy, they're not very bad at all. Consider this. First, Institutional Brokers Estimate Service, which tracks thousands of profit forecasts, finds that analysts are cutting relatively fewer forecasts now compared to just a month ago. Second, one big area of over-optimism was airlines, but that was because oil price cuts have not dropped as quickly as anticipated to the profit line. And finally, Prudential Base reports that there were a number of surprisingly good profits reports from consumer companies. One of the big advantages TV networks have over their independent and cable competitors is public relations. They announce a new show, for example, and just about every paper in the country carries the news, which is why Joan Rivers' scrap over leaving Johnny Carson's show was more than just a gossip columnist's dream. It was also a genuine public relations coup for Rupert Murdoch's newly acquired Fox TV stations, where Rivers will do a late-night show. Very few realistic observers think that a fourth network has much of a chance, but if you're gonna start one, what better way than the Rivers-Carson fracas? It's called a lot of attention to Fox's plan to run new primetime programming just like the networks. There is method to this madness. What's so stunning about the allegations of trading on inside information by a Drexel Burnham Lambert investment banker is that the government finally got one. No one doubts this kind of thing goes on. Study after study shows that the stock prices of takeover targets often, if not usually, go up before the takeover is announced publicly. But fear of government prosecution has never been high on Wall Street. That's because even the biggest cases have never involved someone nearly as entrenched as Dennis Levine of Drexel. In fact, the SEC has long had a reputation for benign neglect of insider information abuses. The SEC has sent a sharp message to Wall Street. It's going to do its job. More in the vein of public information, one savvy investor says G. Heilman Brewing virtually announced in its annual report that it's looking for an acquisition. Because it's managed its regional brands such as Tuborg and Colt 45 so well, this investor thinks an acquisition would kick its stock up. And one candidate, he says, Miller, owned by Philip Morris. Jack?
Thanks, Jeff. We'll take a look ahead to next week, right after this. This week's Money Monitor. One of the highest yielding 5-year IRA CDs is at Continental Savings in Bel Air, Texas, a yield of 10.39% compounded daily.
Strictly Business is sponsored by NYNEX.
Your business depends on its lines of communication. But if your system isn't properly designed, communications can break down. That's why NYNEX Business Information Systems gives you the planning, the training, the maintenance, all the support you need to get the most out of your system. And getting started is as simple as this. NYNEX Business Information Systems.
Well, with temperatures heading up into the upper 90s over the next couple of days, looks like the Big Apple's going to become the baked apple. With the temperatures falling as fast as the leaves, looks like we're going to have to issue a tweed alert. Unless you really bundle up out there tomorrow morning, you are going to know what it feels like to be a piece of frozen spinach in your freezer. If you're coming into town today, don't forget to bring your city
The best dressed people in New York get their weather from Al Roker. News 4 New York. Is there any reason to watch anyone else?
Next week on Strictly Business, the promise was that health maintenance organizations, HMOs, would make obsolete the local doctor's office and maybe even the big medical insurance services. But the prepaid medical plans have run into complications. We'll take a look at whether the HMOs will dominate a far more competitive health care market and what happens if they don't. Until then, I'm Jack Cafferty. Make it a good week.